Dr. Mark Harrison, let me turn this over to you to share with us today. Thank you so much for agreeing to be on the platform today.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. It's weird to be in a room of people from Georgia. I haven't been in Georgia since Albany State days, so you know how long ago that
Come on, go Rams.
was. Yeah, 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 go Rams. I was 24 at that age too. Wow, yeah,
Crazy.
yeah. So again, thanks again. A little bit about my story. Forget all that bio. I'll tell you why I'm doing what I am doing. We all are familiar with COVID, and COVID, a lot of issues came out with people dealing with mental health, just dealing with socialization as well. During this time, I had two of my frat brothers who were really, really struggling very bad. Where one I had to do a welfare call on just to make sure that he went to work. During this time, he ended up committing suicide. And when I got the call, it was on a Tuesday around 11:42. I can remember the time exactly. That I had spoke to him at 4 o'clock in the morning and said, "I'm doing this, brother, because I love you." He broke down into tears. Again, I'm gonna call you later once I get to work and get kind of settled. 11:42 came and I got the call from his girlfriend that he had shot and killed himself in his 6-month-old daughter's room. It kind of took me back a little bit. I didn't really blame it on myself, but it was a question of what could I have done differently? What could I have done to actually save him? Had a chance to speak at his funeral. That was not a plan that I really wanted to do either. Um, was speaking, I was just talking about the importance of how brothers need to really come together and just talk, just to do a check-in. From that, black men were talking to me. Yo, I'm struggling. I'm struggling. I'm like, I don't even know what to really to do with this information, but people are reaching out to me. So I decided to do something called a Facebook Live. Did a Facebook Live. 5,000 people were on the call. 5,000 people. Again, I guess I was one of the first black men who really was going to talk about it. And I didn't know there was 5,000 people until the moderator told me we had 5,000 people. The site was getting ready to crash. But during this time, I started receiving DMs like, yo, brother, you're touching on the story. I need help. Again, I didn't know what to do with this information. I just wanted to make sure the importance that men had an outlet or a way to speak, not realizing that I wasn't dealing with my own mental health issues and struggles too. Again, I'm in the gym, and one of my friends, very prominent in the area, he's on iHeartRadio, talked about how he tried to commit suicide 3 times. And I'm looking at him like, dude, you're on the radio. You know, people love to hear your voice, they love to see you, and here you are struggling. I'm like, wow, I got something really going on. What do I do with this? Ironically enough, my trainer is from Georgia, has a degree in psychology, and he was like, yo, bro, I'm struggling too. And I'm like, wow, what is going on? So by then I said, okay, there's a niche for this. You know, let's come up with an outlet where black men can really start talking. So I started reaching out. So I started doing live podcasts and live radio stuff about the severity of mental health and why black men aren't sharing their stories or why we don't speak. Realizing that I was a fraud. And the reason why I'm going to say I was a fraud, I never shared my story, told people how I was struggling. I didn't tell somebody that, hey, you know, a couple years ago, I tried to commit suicide. And what I did was one of my friends was at my house and I was in a real dark, dark, dark place. Police officer, you know, came into the house. He had his uniform on, gun and everything. So he took off his belt that had his gun on and went to the bathroom. When he went to the bathroom, I picked up his gun to actually use it on myself. I had the gun pointed, and what stopped me from pulling the trigger, the phone rang, and it was my son. So that stopped. He came out and was like, "Yo, what's going on?" And I told him by then, I'm in that ugly cry. Like I need help. I am struggling. He started crying also, saying he was going through the same things. And I'm like, wow, we are really dealing with some severity of issues of black men. But I had to realize our trauma didn't start as black men. It started off as really as black boys. So how can I actually serve my community a little bit better? I decided to go to school to get the degree. And I got the degree in clinical mental health. Unbeknownst to me, I am the only black man in my cohort. So I'm sharing the stories of things that black men go through or struggles. Why is it stigma? why we don't talk, why we had this thing called toxic masculinity, why we're dealing with that. So the dean was like, Mr. Harrison, you got a lot to say. So they followed me around the community when I did a barbershop talk. University of Phoenix changed their whole curriculum around clinical mental health based off of me. And they did a whole piece on that. Again, I'm struggling. I had that breakdown cry, but guess what I didn't do? I didn't go seek therapy because I was actually scared. So I realized, I said, I'm doing these talks, and in order to serve my population a little bit better, I knew I knew I needed to go to therapy. Therapy, I had to be very specific. I wanted a black man, somebody who was older than me. I wanted somebody who was in the field who could actually relate to. I didn't want a woman because I realized that women were my triggers, aka my mother. I would wanted somebody of a particular age. I didn't want anybody under 40 because I was going to be able to talk circles around them. So I ended up getting a therapist. Loved him. And I'm like, okay, this therapy thing is really easy. It ain't as intense as everybody says it is. Until one day my therapist said to me, let's take it back to the beginning of your childhood. And I was like, whoa, I don't want to do that. And when we did it, everything came out. He had to stop the therapy session. I had so much I wanted to get out. Realizing, I said, okay, this is not as bad as people say. And I felt like a sense of relief doing it, but I knew I had to keep it going on. So here I am 2 months into therapy. My therapist goes to the doctor for a routine checkup, and you never guess what happened. He died. Yes, one of those untimely deaths. So when he died, guess what I did? I stopped therapy. I'm like, uh, you know, who am I going to get so I can feel good to open up again? So I went through 6 therapists after him because I just didn't relate to anybody. And during that time, guess what happened? I went back into a dark slump. I was dealing with all these men listening to their stories. This time it was a little bit different. And I had found a good therapist. I tried to jump off a bridge. Right. And it was it. I can remember the story so well. I knew what I was going to do because I had it planned. This time I said, I am planning this thing routinely so there are no hiccups along the way. So I took some Ambien Percocets, saw the bridge, had my Bible with me. In doing it, I called a family member and said, yo, I need help. I'm getting ready to jump. What did my family member do? Oh, I don't have time to come get you. That does happen. That does happen. I called one of my boys and said, yo, I'm getting ready to jump off this bridge. His response was, oh man, be quiet. You be okay. That happens. What I had to realize is, remember, I have the skills that some people don't know how to handle this because they're dealing with their own trauma. So I said, okay, let me call my therapist and let her know what is going on. So by then, I am at the edge of the bridge. By then, I had jumped over the wires and I'm sitting on the edge and I'm talking to my therapist. My therapist, God love her. She got on the phone with her assistant. Her assistant then called the police. Very specific with the police. And why I say that is, it is the crisis team that she had to talk to because the regular police really aren't trained and skilled in handling this. Because 9 times out of 10, they probably would have killed me. So the crisis team came, and when I looked behind me, there were 2 police. 10 minutes later, there were about 50 police on top of this bridge. By then, they had shut down the streets and everything. And I kept saying, don't these people who were driving down the street see this man standing on the bridge getting ready to jump? No one saw me. The police saw me. So the crisis team came in, they were talking to me over and over and over. Like, first thing he said was, how did you get over this barbed wire? I had no clue. I had no clue. That's how in a dark space I was. So fortunately, they were able to talk me over. They sent me into a psychiatric hospital, for the lack of a better word. Come to find out, there's no therapy going on in these hospitals. There's just a holding pattern, which gave me more information to do my research on like what actually happens in these hospitals. Nothing at all. It's just a place to keep you until that they feel that you are doing better. So doing this while I'm in the hospital, I said to one of my friends, and it's just weird how men relate to each other when it comes to this. He said, brother, why didn't you tell me that you were struggling? I said, I called you and it took you 3 weeks to call me back. I said, if I'm calling you and I'm in distress, I needed you. But men go through that. So when I'm talking to men now, Carmen mentioned this little TikTok trend that's going on with men saying, hey, good night, brother, whatever. I don't do that. In the morning, I text guys and say, hey, how are you feeling? What's going on? Or I'm doing a check in. But I also realize when I say, how are you doing? What are men going to say? I'm good. I'm fine. I'm okay. I don't do that anymore. I say on a scale of 1 to 10, what number are you? That throws them off. Most men are at a 6 or a 7. And that's a eye opening for me, like, all right, let's talk. Let's talk about this a little bit more. So doing all this, God put me in this position to speak to, I say, groups of people. Um, and I was speaking to the black pastors of Maryland. And you think, okay, here are these black men, they're pastors, they're strong, they're not going to share. That was the first group I ever had. About 50% of the men were in the room crying because they were all dealing with their own trauma, which stemmed from childhood. You know, talking about when we're raised in a house, we're taught that whatever happens in this house stays in this house. We all know that one. You know what I'm saying? Or one even better, a young man plays professional football. I mean, he's one of my people I talk to every day. We're good friends now. He has a 4-year-old son. His son falls on the ground. He cries. What is the man going to say to his son? Get up. What you crying for? It's natural. It's what we do. So I had to say to him one day, you don't know your son's pain. How are you going to tell him to get up and stop crying when he's in a pain that you know nothing about? I said, this is what we do as men. So we need to come up with a way where we actually stop that. It worked for him because what he did was he started talking about his own issues as a childhood trauma. So one of the very famous podcasts that I did and it's posted was the episode with the Fresh Prince of Bel Air, Will Smith, with his father. Yeah, the producers who were doing this podcast had never seen it before. Yeah, Carson. Oh, yeah, I'm like, come on, this
That's like classic. I don't know if you were in the
classic.
90s, like that's classic TV. But
Well,
yeah,
they
go
were
ahead.
young. They were young. So
Okay.
I said, you need to watch that episode. They watched the episode and it was like, wow, this is my brother. One lady said, wow, this was my father. I said, yeah, that trauma that continues to go through us through adulthood. And what do? We take that trauma and we pass it on to our children, especially men. Even when I'm talking to women who are raising single boys, I always ask the question, how are your boys doing? Oh, they're fine and they're laughing. No.
Mark, I want to can you,
Go
because I think we do have some
ahead.
younger folks on the call. Can you just give a snippet of what the episode, what took place in the episode for people that may not,
Oh, okay.
they may not have been watching it live like you and I in the 90s.
Yeah, but yeah, it still comes on and you can search it.
It does, but you know what I mean. They just may not be in that culture in that time.
Yeah, I got it. It's Will Smith who gets reunited with his father. His father abandoned him at a young age. Hence the reason why he goes to Beverly with Uncle Phil and him. His father comes back making all types of promises. Oh, son, we're going to go travel the world. We're going to do this. And this is a young man who's longing for the love of his father. All he wants to do is be his father. His father sets up, yeah, I'm coming to get you on this day, shows up to Uncle Phil's house and says to Uncle Phil, can you tell Will that something else came up and I can't do it? And by then, Uncle Phil's like, well, once you leave here, don't ever come back because of the trauma that you're putting in. So Will comes and says, hey, Daddy, I'm ready to go. And Dad's like, hey, son, I'm not going to be able to go. So Will goes from calling him Dad to back to calling him Lou. Okay, Lou. You know what I'm saying? It's that trauma all over again. So the part that gets everybody is when Will Smith's like, I'm gonna be a better man, I'm gonna be a better father, I'm gonna take all these flat girls to the prom, I'm gonna do this and this and this and this. And Uncle Phil was saying, it's okay, Will, it's okay. And the part where everybody loses it, you know where I'm going. When Will Smith says, why doesn't he want me? And he busts out crying. That takes most men, 90% of men who see that lose it. Like, why doesn't this man woman, it is that childhood trauma that we continue to take. So if you get a chance to watch it, YouTube it, Fresh Prince of Bel-Air Daddy Issue. It'll come right up.
Shaka, thank you for that, Shaka Barrett. He just put the link in the chat. So if y'all ever wanna, it's a short link, but yeah, a short clip of the thing. So thanks for putting that in there, Shaka.
Yeah, but this is really the reason why I am doing it. I've been in a room with guys who were gang members. Um, I've been in a room where it was corporate individuals from Mercedes. I've been with football players, NBA players. But the story is always the same. How do we stop the stigma? And the stigma actually has to stop in the household. That's how it really actually has to stop. Again, it starts in childhood trauma, and we don't address the childhood trauma, it then becomes a situation where we turn to men and the traumas manifested along the way.
Yeah, this is so good. Thank you for sharing your story. And I've
But
heard it,
all
but
this
like
was accident. All this was by accident.
never, never by accident.
This is what God has called me to do.
Right. I was like, I don't, yeah, it's never by accident, but at least in the grand scheme, in our minds, we're thinking like, this is not the agenda. This is not the thing I had planned for my life. This is not what I expected to go through. Nobody writes in their life plan as a child, oh, let me go through a mental health crisis so I can be a mental health counselor. Like that is not usually the route. Right. And, now people want to go into that to help other people. But, let me ask you. So, some questions kind of came up as you were going through. You talked about you didn't want to go to therapy even after you had kind of had the issue, the breakdown. What kept you away, and then what was the transition that finally got you there? I know you
Uh,
mentioned you found the right therapist, but what was that? Was there a click in the brain? Was there something somebody said? Was there just a new attitude, or what was that transition that got you from "I'm not doing it" to "I will go"?
I got tired.
Mm,
The weight became too much.
mm,
Um, and my son said something to me one day. He said, "Dad, it's okay,"
mm.
and I did it.
What was he at the time?
Ooh, 17.
Wow.
He was like,
Powerful.
Dad, it's okay. But even doing that, and I was researching therapists, and before I really got into this whole mental health piece, I was talking to a lady, and I knew she was a therapist. So I was like, I just want to ask you a couple questions. So to me, she wasn't trying to be my therapist. I said, I can do this. And the questions got deep, and I just started crying. I'm like, dang it, this is not what I wanted to do.
I didn't come here to cry,
No,
right?
yeah, and I didn't come here to do all this with you. Um,
Yeah.
and that was kind of like the gateway for me.
Mm,
And when I got off the call with her, it was like, whoo, I can breathe.
mm.
And that's what did it. And I do something when I'm with groups, and I really did it with my fraternity. At the end of each session, we do something called I Need a Hug.
Mm.
Hug each other. And that takes it to a whole nother level also. Something as simple as called I Need a Hug.
Yeah. I think we forget like the power of physical touch.
Right.
Non-sexual, whatever physical touch. We just
Right.
need that from other people. That's powerful. So you mentioned about it started in childhood and the issues with your mom. Was your mom a single mother, a single parent?
Well, it's a good question. She was a teenage parent.
Okay.
Yeah, she
Mm,
had twin boys. She had twin boys at the age of 18, and people know the story. She was 18, cheerleading in high school. My real father um, played professional football, but he was a womanizer. So, in her eyes, she was keeping us away from the pain and the drama that he was going to cause. But in tune, it really impacted me and my brother a
yeah,
lot.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, when I think about that, and I think about sort of Black community, and oftentimes we hear about just the rates of single mothers raising sons. What are some words of wisdom that you would give to single mothers raising sons? And then I think you've already kind of touched on a little bit of it, of men raising boys right now, so that we can have a generation of young men who grow up to be males, young males who grow up to be men, to really be solid in their mental health, or at least being able to talk about it? What are some thoughts that you have around that?
Well, what I tell single mothers now who are raising boys, put them in different type of mentoring clubs, like 100 Black Men. My fraternity has different things. Make sure that there are positive male role models around them. And when I say role models, I'm talking about more than one, because every man can bring something totally different into your son's lives. But because a young man is going to need that. You know what I'm saying? Of course, a man needs the love of his mother, but he needs the strong backbone of a man as well. And a lot of the women I tell that to have done it. And I'll give you a prime example. Last week, I was at a gathering, and I was not trying to do anything mental health. I was just trying to go smoke a cigar and chill. And one of my boys said, "Hey, this is Mark, mental health guru," to this young lady, and she was telling me about her son. Um,
Mhm.
and I said, "Well, what's wrong with him? He's 15. He's cutting school. He's getting high. He's getting into trouble." Single mother. And I said, "Well, where's his dad?" He's only met his dad once, and his dad happened to be in prison. So I said, "So is your son acting out of anger?" And she said, "I think so." So I said, so I gave her some tips. Put him in different type of clubs, sporting events. Make sure there are positive male role models against him. But more importantly, make sure that your child goes to therapy. You know what I'm saying? So she asked me, could I be his therapist? And I said, no, it'll be a conflict of interest, but put him into therapy. But where it went wrong, she never followed up. She
But
never
yeah,
followed up.
yeah.
So I saw him at the school. I went to a school. Got to do some work with the schools too. And I hate to say this, he's in the school for behavioral kids. It's one step away from the juvenile system.
So like an
And
alternative school or something like
oh
that.
yeah,
Like it's
yeah,
okay.
yeah. And it scared me when I walked in there because it was a lot. It was like a lean on me. I mean, everybody was all over the place.
They need
And
Mr. Clark.
yeah, and the principal was like, "Hey, I want you to meet Dink." She
Mm,
didn't know that I knew who Dink was. His name is Demario. So I said to the principal, "Why are you calling him Dink? Why aren't you calling him by his real name?" And I said,
mm,
You can't be friends with this young guy." So he gets in the hallway. She said, "Hey, come over here. I want you to meet somebody." And he walks, and he's taller than me. He's about 13 or 14 years old. And he says, "What's up?" And I'm like, "I don't do what's up." So he was kind of like taken back. And I'm like, you got to set the tone. He's
mm.
already in the school, so he already has that niche against him. So I'm walking through the hallway, and I said to him, "Come on, let me take you in the classroom. I just want to see." The classroom was off the chain. So I pulled him out. When I pulled him out, now I tell people I used to be a Baltimore City teacher. I was in the hood, so I understand the ins and outs. So I kind of pinned him up against the wall, and I just started giving him positive affirmations. You need to do this. You need to do this. You're a smart guy. You're this. You're intelligent. This is what I expect from you. He started to cry. Okay. And I asked him, "Why are you crying?" He said, "I don't know." And I said, "It is. Nobody has ever given you anything positive for you
Mhm.
to go on." I said, "But these are my expectations. I don't want you in the school. I want you to do this and this." So I said, "Wipe your face. We're going to go back in the classroom." Went back in
Mhm.
the classroom. As soon as I walked out to my car, he was like, "Hey, Doc, when are you coming back again? I want to see you." And I knew that I got him right then. So then I told my friend, "You tell his mama." I gave her specific directions I really wanted her to do with her son. Now she needs to follow up. But I ended up getting him a therapist that
Yeah, helping them find.
he actually does very well.
So let me ask you this, because I mean, mental health, I think, COVID just exposed a lot of that. Just really made it like a pressure cooker. Like we were already under social stress, and then COVID made it, I think, just much more visible. And we were locked in, locked down, and shut in, all those things with people, and couldn't get out like we normally maybe could express or get some relief from mental health stresses. So what so everybody was going through it, is what I'm
Right,
trying to say.
right.
Are there unique burdens or unique issues that you see that are specific to the Black community, or that maybe are exasperated by African American issues in these United States or in communities? Like what makes Black mental health unique to other people who may, or not even Black, maybe people of color, people who are marginalized, however you want to kind of reference that. What makes that different than sort of our Caucasian or white population, or even just folks in general? Uh, What makes it unique is what I'm trying to say.
Because we are a unique being itself.
Okay.
Um, Most of us coming from a background where therapy was non-existent. We were told to pray about it. You know, and I always tell people, God created a therapist for a reason. So when somebody says pray about it, God tells you to go to therapy. But again, it's how we are raised. What happens in this house stays in this house. Don't tell your business. Pray about it. But also, too, which is another burden for us, that social media.
Mm.
That social media is doing more damage than anything.
Seem like across the board, like no matter what your skin color is or whatever your race you'd identify. But yeah.
Yeah, even age. Just there's times when I have to get off social media because it becomes too much. And I
Yep.
always tell people, like when I'm speaking in schools, no one ever tells you how they got to Z. You know what I'm saying?
Mm.
You see the flashy lights, the cars, the money, but no one tells you the struggles along the way that they get. And I wish people would actually do that a little bit more, because a 15-year-old person, they can't rationalize that. All they see
Right.
is the result is the money, the cars, and
And a lot of it's not even real. Like that's the thing.
but also too, I realize it's not even the 15-year-old kids anymore; it's the adults. You know,
Yes.
yes. So that as well. But we are a being that likes to socialize, and COVID stopped that. You know, but also in tune, I said, but COVID made us realize, hey, we got issues, and we need to start dealing with these issues.
Mm-hmm.
And it's becoming a lot for a lot of people. So I looked at COVID as being good. We are now tackling something that we have years and years suppressed.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think it did very much highlight that. So, y'all, if y'all have questions for Dr. Mark Harrison, you can put it in the chat, or you can use the raise hand feature on Zoom, and I'll make sure I call you so you can, say your question out loud, or comments, or anything you want to share or add to this discussion. It's not just me having this discussion, so I want you all to feel free to impart your wisdom. Feel free to ask your questions. You mentioned about like they say go pray about it, right? Just you know, I've seen now this trend though. I saw there's somebody made this shirt that was like God and therapy, or Jesus and therapy. Like, so some people are getting it, right? But where is the role of faith in, which has been such a pillar in communities of color, and more specifically Black communities? What is the role of faith in that, and where do you see faith leaders? Where can they interject to provide support for Black men and boys related to mental health?
Hmm. I'm laughing at, because I told one pastor, I said, you need to be real about your own mental health issues first.
Mm-hmm.
You can't preach about it if you're not doing it.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of churches have therapists in their church, and I always ask, are your therapists actually doing the work? A
Mm-hmm.
lot of them say they are, but a lot of them say it's a struggle, because again, if I'm going to my church talking about it, is it going to get out into the church community? And I always say is we have to control our own narrative. I tell people all the time I go to therapy, but then more on the other flip side, once I say it and become vulnerable, other people say, yeah, I go to therapy too. So you kind of like open up that door, like it's okay to say that you're
Yeah.
going to therapy. Now it's okay to go, you know.
Yeah.
But as men, we are generally waiting for somebody to say that they're going first. Like, are you going
Before
to
they admit.
right? But once you let that cat out the bag, people will actually start talking. And I'm kind of glad about that. But for
Yeah.
me, I knew I had to be vulnerable first, because if I didn't show my vulnerability, no other person was going to do the same.
Yeah. Miss Patricia, I saw you come off mute. Please add
Yes.
to the discussion, or yeah.
Yes, I'm a single mother and I raised a son. And I can relate to everything that Dr. Harrison has said, because I learned early that I had to bring in positive role male models. I was a strong Black woman who was determined to raise my son the right way, but I wasn't the type that felt like I didn't need a man, because I knew that it took both to get him, and it took two to raise him. So I enrolled positive Black males in my life. I had a nephew who was great that would come over and spend time with him and talk to him. His granddaddy was great. I had male friends who would come and spend time and talk to him or whatever. So he got that rounded upbringing. But I've noticed through the years, which is why Black men have such a problem, is because of the words that have been spoken over them as they grew, as they came into the world. Men are not supposed to cry. Suck it up, be
Mhm.
strong, be a man. And words have power.
Mhm.
So if you go through years of this, then you begin to feel like the first time you cry, something is wrong with me because a man is not supposed to cry. But if you don't have anyone to share and explain this to you, then you begin to fall into that rut of that's where the mental health comes in at. Yeah, something's wrong with me. I cried,
Yeah.
because you've been told this most of your life.
Right.
And I didn't raise my son that way. I let him know it's okay to cry, baby. That does not determine your strength. You came into this world a strong being. You will grow stronger. But if you need to cry, you cry. Because mama's always going to be here with you. I'm going to be here for you. And I taught him, even though his father wasn't in his life, I taught him to love his father. I told him the good things about his father. There were things that perhaps were bad about his father because there's something bad about all of us. But
Mhm.
I never shared that with him because I knew as he grew, if there was anything that he needed to know about his father, be it good or bad, he would see it. And
Mhm.
I would rather for him to be something that he discovered as opposed to me poisoning his mind.
Mhm.
So I never
Awesome.
did that.
Thank you. Thank you. Shaka, I see you with your hand up. Please join the conversation.
Well, I want to
Oh, go
piggyback on
ahead, Mark. You're going to respond to Patricia, and then Shaka,
yeah,
you can respond after Mark.
yeah, I appreciate that. Strength is in vulnerability. And I tell people that all the time. I'm very fortunate to have a group of men around me who do cry. Um, and it feels great. And we embrace each other afterwards because for so long, a lot of us have 20, 30, 40 years of suppressing that emotion in. Um,
Layers.
yeah.
Yeah.
And when we get together and something's going on, because when one cries, we all start. It's like a domino effect. And as Oprah says, you go into that ugly cry. We get into that. We get into that ugly cry, but when we leave there, we feel so fulfilled. You know what I'm saying? And we don't feel like I'm gonna walk out this door and somebody's gonna be oh, I heard y'all was in there crying. Like, no, that's not the situation for us. And we don't want to be around people who even judge us for that particular reason as well.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Yeah. Shaka.
First, I wanted to tell you thank you, Dr. Harrison, for uh, sharing, because I know that, like you said, one of the things a lot of us don't share our story. Um, and so that's why a lot of us don't understand that we have a connection. Um, I also, to your point, I'm a therapist as well. And so to your point, one of my goals as a therapist is to get Black men excited about the therapy part of their healing journey.
Right.
But I think that to your point, we have to be competent enough as practitioners and comfortable enough in who we are to, like you mentioned, say, no, everybody can't do this work.
Right.
Like beyond the cultural aspect of it, the work is done when there's a legitimate connection between the client and the therapist. If that doesn't happen, nothing's getting done, right?
Exactly.
But then that therapist has to be culturally competent, not just as an African American, but African Americans, we come from different backgrounds, all of that stuff. And so if you can't make that client feel safe, then how are they going to get the work done? Because like you said, a lot of people do therapy, but they're not doing work. And
Right.
so additionally, we have to be getting our own therapy. So even as a therapist, I know that I'm more effective when I've been doing therapy. But if I've been real busy and haven't got to get a session in, then it starts to show in the work that I do. But like you said, I think this is really important work. I think the biggest thing is, one of the tools that I tell my clients, or the two tools I tell them they have to be intentional with it. So you have to be intentional with your self-care, intentional with how you celebrate yourself, because we can take care of ourselves, right? We can take a bath. That's self-care. But when we take a bath and we put the radio on and we get the body wash that we like to wash, and that's a whole, or like ladies, a lot of times, you know, you can shower, but there's a difference when you put the candles out and you run a bubble bath. That's being intentional. And when you're intentional about it, you're doing the work necessary. And a lot of us aren't being intentional in these spaces. So we'll get a bunch of brothers together and be like, this is a safe space. How do we make it a safe space? What was the intentionality behind it? So I appreciate you mentioning that, because as a clinician, you know, you have to be intentional with this. Otherwise, anybody can read a book or a post or whatever. And on social media, it's a whole lot of unlicensed clinicians
Perfect.
um,
Yep. Exactly.
that are doing that. So I just wanted to tell you,
Yeah.
share that with you, because we literally just lost a young person in February who completed suicide, and
So
it,
sorry.
it really, you know, and to your point, like, you know, we had just taken them to Grady Behavior Health and we're advocating it, but like you said, they had to wait for an appointment and this, that, and the third, and it just it wasn't dealt with the sanctity that it should have, considering, you know, the value we had for his life. Um, but just being intentional and creating those intentional safe spaces. And I just want to thank you for the work that you do.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think too, one of the things with Voices for Prevention, we have a yearly prevention day at the Capitol to talk about this, you know, policies at the policy level and talk to our elected officials. But then we also have presentations from folks. And I know last year our theme was about words and how our words can, our mindsets and can change things, and just being mindful of how we talk about it and the stigmas. And I know one of the things that they've helped me learn was the shift from like committed suicide to died by suicide, as if suicide is some crime that somebody's committing. So that was even another way to look at things. But then also, as I think Miss Patricia was talking about, you know, when she said, you know, you said boys don't cry and all those things, and I think you referenced that too, Dr. Harrison. What I've seen with single mothers is other men come in and say sometimes, you babying that boy. When mom does say, let him cry, it's okay, right? Or come here, baby, let mama kiss that boo boo, let that boy whatever. So what's the balance? Because I think there is something about like, okay, mama, you might be overbearing, doing the most, doing too much, right? But then there is the balance of letting his emotions show and being affirming those emotions. Can you speak to a
Well,
balance in that as parents are parenting their
she
kids?
she's dealing with her own demons.
Okay.
I'll give you a prime example. A young lady walked into my office, young boy, son's 10 years old, and basically told me he wasn't crap. You know what I'm saying? Cursed him out. You ain't this, you ain't that, you ain't this. Single mother. I got tired of it, so I said to her, so if he ain't crap, what does that make you?
Mm.
She was like, what? I said, if he ain't crap and he's with you all the time, I said, then he's picking it up from you. Because by then I was angry.
Yeah.
And she was like, wow, no one ever told me that.
Yeah.
I said,
To
well,
put the
I mean,
mirror up.
yeah. But I also
Yeah.
want to tell people about suicide. Suicide really isn't about killing yourself. I just want
Hmm.
it's really about killing the pain. And a lot of
Yep.
people don't understand that. You know what I'm saying?
Mm.
It's the point
Mm.
where you can't take the pain anymore. And the only way of getting rid of it is just saying, I'm just going to just let everything go. People are always like,
Yeah.
oh, I'm in a dark place. I want to kill myself. But you're really trying to just get rid of the pain.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for that. If there anybody else with questions, put them in the chat or come off mute. While they're doing that, one of the things you both have mentioned just about the field of mental health, questions. One is, as on this call, they're mental health advocates. So they're hearing secondhand trauma, right? Because that's the thing, of other people. So what are some suggestions or thoughts? We talked about self-care, and I even go beyond that and talk about sacred self-care and soul care, not just, physical care, but care of your mind, body, and spirit. But then what are some things we can do to help carry that weight? Because we're hearing the trauma. Yes, we all need therapists. Get a therapist, right? So that's start there. But are there other things sort of help us carry the weight and trauma of others? And then how can we get more Black men into the field of mental health? I mean, looking at this call,
Okay. Okay.
is y'all two representing
I'm gonna throw this at the group. What's it called? What's the name of this group?
Voices for Prevention?
Voice. I'm gonna throw this at you. One thing I have been trying to do, and maybe this is a good outlet. I really want to do some kind of HBCU tour to
We
talk
got CAU on the line.
to to talk about this, because one thing when we go to school, we don't hear counselors talking about you want to go into psychology, sociology. We don't hear that. You know what I'm saying? So we have to put that information out to some of the career advisors and stuff. I got into it because of the situation that I was just dealing with, but we need more Black men therapists as well. But my goal is to really do an HBCU tour because it needs to be talked about. Just as Black people, we need that outlet, and we don't have one. You know what I'm saying? One thing for me, one of my outlets is when I'm down and out, I have to listen to music. And sometimes that music will break me. Put some good gospel on it, it's really good. Hey, them tears come out. But also, I journal. In the beginning, I would refuse to journal. And one of the reasons why I said that, and my therapist said to me one day, "Why don't you journal?" And I said to her, "I don't want to." "Why don't you want to journal, Mr. Harrison?" "Because I'm scared what I'm going to write down." And that was powerful to her. And once
Yeah.
I
And
started
writing it makes it real.
it does.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
does. Yeah, but it's been great for me. It really.
Hmm.
So I look
Awesome.
at different outlets, you know, as well. But I always tell, my parents, pay attention to your children. I had a father called me wondering what was going on with his son. And he said, my son's talking about committing suicide. And I said, well, how did you know? He said, because he told his sister. And I said, he told his sister, but he didn't tell you. Why does he feel ashamed the way he can't tell you, Dad? You know? And Dad was like, I don't know. I don't know. Just being macho, that toxic
Mhm.
masculinity that I'm talking about. So we started talking a little bit more. And, son wasn't talking to Dad because all Dad wanted to do was play football and party all the time. And I said, well, Dad, he went to his sibling. I said, so that's your cue right there that you need to go ahead and get help because once he stops talking, you're going to have a bigger problem.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, good, good. That's so key. There's a training I know that throughout the state of Georgia they're using pretty regularly called QPR, question, persuade, and I forget the R. But anybody refer. Okay, thank you. Come on, Nakia. Thank you. Right, but it's about training. But because we don't ask, I know I took it, and I should remember what QPR. But what the one thing I remember about that training is specifically asking people, "Are you thinking about suicide?" and not feeling like if I bring it up, I'm gonna make them go do it now. Right. So I just think just general training for folks. Like you were talking about the young man, his sister, if she had some training, she would know how to respond to her brother. I want to recognize Slim. I was saying, well, we only had a couple Black men on the line, but I see you, Slim. All right. And I think, just the naming of itself, I was like, he probably Black, but I didn't. that was my own, you know what I'm saying? I have to be careful about biases, right? So I just Miss Jester, I saw you come off mute. So I wanna
Yeah.
recognize you. Do you want to share anything or say anything? And we got a few more
Yeah.
minutes here. Yeah.
Okay, I wanted Mr. Harrison to please put a way I can contact you
Okay.
into the chat. Also, when you say you want to do a tour, what would that look like?
I'm thinking about that now. And the reason why I am bringing it up is I just really want to talk about getting rid of the stigma as it pertains to mental health, especially with the Black boys. Because I said to a famous person, to Roger P. Henson, you have all these mental health pods on these different HBCU campuses, but guess what they're focused on? The Black
Women.
women.
Yeah.
Again, why are you putting the men to the side? You know what I'm saying? So we need something for Black men.
Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I need to get in contact with you because we have some things going here, and I think that you could really bring a lot to the table.
Okay, that's great. And Carmen will give you. I'm gonna talk to Carmen when we're done, but I'll make sure we.
And it while y'all talk, I saw Slim, were you want to say something?
And Shaka had his hand up too.
And I saw Shaka's hand up. Okay. All right, Shaka, while you're talking, I'm gonna go snag Mark's contact information. You okay with me putting your email in here, Mark, and your face? I mean, your Instagram. Okay.
Yeah, but email. But she's talking business, so email. But you can put all that stuff in there.
Okay.
Um,
Well,
I was
we're
just
doing
gonna say that
something, and you're right on time. Excuse me,
no,
Shaka.
you're fine. No, I was just gonna say that and I'll speak for myself. I think in the beginning, as a professional, whether as a social worker or a therapist, when you talk about asking about suicide, it was more of an obligation. You literally held your breath, or I would hold my breath, like, God, please,
Mhm.
And I looked at it as like,
Mhm.
'cause if they do, then I got to go through this whole process, blah, blah, blah. But what I've learned is that, and you kind of alluded to it, um, it's like a sacred responsibility. You have an opportunity to potentially save somebody's life. And so if you look at it
Wow.
more about like, hey, how are you doing? This could be my chance to connect you to, help you realize that I do see you, that you're not invisible, whatever have you, and you could literally save a life. And so I think that the more that I do it that way, it takes more of the stigma off of it. And then realize that it's not your job to have a counseling session, right? It's your job to just be present, hear the person, support the person, and help them get linked to 988 or help them call whoever they need to call so that they can then get the help that they have. And I think sometimes we take on too much responsibility, and really all we're doing is I'm honoring your humanity and helping to save a life.
Agreed. Agreed.
Man, that's so powerful that the way you phrase it that way. Yeah. We're honoring somebody's humanity. I'm still pulling the information. I know I got it right here. So it's like I just sent it over. So anybody else have, here it is. Anybody else have anything, comments or things you want to say? And then we're gonna do a quick wrap up and some announcements from V4P, but I don't want to cut the conversation if somebody has something pressing that you feel like needs to be shared. Or a question, one final question. Going once, going twice. All right. So I want to thank you all for joining. I hope this was a conversation that you found healthy, helpful, and relevant to the work that we do around substance use prevention, because there's a whole link there, right? Between, you talk about, one way people get away from their issues is they go into substance use, right? And then the connection between substance use and suicide prevention, suicide. And then we want to make sure we're preventing both substance use and suicide, particularly with our young people, but across the board, making it the norm that this is something we talk about, making it the norm where it's not taboo to have a conversation when you're beyond a bad day, right? Because when you have a series of bad days, and where to put that, where to take that, and we want to make sure across the state of Georgia, V4P is about creating this network of folks that do that, and the more we're on these calls and talking to each other, we can refer one another. Hey, oh, you're down in South Georgia. Let me get you in touch with Miss Harris because she's connected down there and can help and support you in that work. Oh my goodness, you're talking about, college age students. Okay, well, we've got Miss Jester on the line who can, we're making these connections, and that's what this is really for, so that we can, one, learn new things and be able to have conversations. So we thank Dr. Harrison for his time, but then two, so that we can network as mental health professionals across Georgia to really support the state of Georgia. I put his information in the chat. Thank you, Miss Harris. The information is much needed and must be shared continuously. Yeah, it's a conversation we need to always have, not one and done, but one to always have. I want to close out with just a few announcements that we have from V4P. One of the things we're doing is want to really highlight the work that you all are doing as members of V4P. So if you're not a member of Voices for Prevention, Steve is going to put in the chat the link to the website to go and sign up to become a member. V4PGA.org. Click on member. So if you're not already a member, join so you can stay in this network, stay connected. You'll get the emails, you'll get the information, you'll get the replays, you get access to all of this. We want to make sure that membership has its benefits with any organization. So make sure you do that. And then we're doing, as part of one of the benefits, we're doing some member highlights, and we want to highlight highlight stories of what the work you are doing, stories, maybe there's a specific case study that you are working on where you saw some positive outcomes. We want to highlight that. And so in July, we're looking to have two of you or people who are part of V4P to come on and share just that. So if you're interested in doing that, I'm going to ask, Steve is going to put in the chat the V4PGA at livedrugfree.org email to put that in there. So the email and let us know, hey, I'm interested in sharing my story as a mental health professional, as someone working on substance use prevention. You want to share your story because in July, we're going to highlight, I think we've selected two. It'll be July 17th. That member networking call will be to highlight you and the work that you're doing, at least two of you in the work that you're doing. So if that's something you're interested in, please send an email to that email so we'll know that you're interested. And even if you're not able to do it in July, we have a newsletter that goes out quarterly. We can put your story in the newsletter to highlight the work that you're doing. So we want to make sure that our members get access or get exposure is the word I'm looking for the work that you all are doing. Also after July, we have a member webinar in September 4th. So you'll be getting the emails on this. So this is a little ways out. And then the 18th, we have another member networking call. So just go ahead and make note on your calendar for those. I want to turn it over to Dr. Harrison. We got 3 minutes left. Any final last words that you want to share and leave with us before we close out today?
Just want to appreciate everybody. Thank you for the work that you're doing. This is a hard task, but it's a task that is well worth it. Again, thank you. This has been great. Again, if you reach me, Carmen, put the information in. I really want to do some more work with you. V4P needs to be extended past Georgia.
Well, we're gonna look. Let's get that funding extended. How about that?
Yeah, yeah. Because people need help, but they also need the resources.
Yeah.
That's one thing that I'm seeing. We don't share resources, and that's a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. So again,
I think we're trying to do it at different levels, community level. And then, like I said, V4P, we do a lot of advocacy work, trying to really have those conversations with legislators about policy around mental health.
Well,
because, but that's a whole nother conversation.
I just had a conversation with a U.S. representative about speaking in front of Congress. It doesn't really touch them until it touches them in their house.
Yeah.
So let's get them before they even get to that state. They gave me some political answer. It is what it is with that. But I'm gonna keep pushing that as well. But again, thank you for all the work that y'all are doing, and I appreciate the time.
Yeah. Thank you all so much for joining. Thank you. Again, his information is in the chat. This has been recorded, so it'll be available, I think, on the V4P website or either on the YouTube page. Correct me if I'm wrong, Steve, where it might be, where we house these. He's trying to come off mute. Let's shout out Steve. Okay, he said that's right, the website. Okay, so shout out to Steve. Steve's been doing the tech in the background. He's the one that let y'all in the meeting. So thank you, Steve, for all your work, background work that you do with V4P. We appreciate you and appreciate each and every one of you all today. Be blessed. Have an amazing week, and we'll see y'all on the next call.